So we're taking you to New York right now. Harvey Weinstein was in the courthouse for a very brief hearing. His lawyer's talking now. Let's take a listen.
To the best of our ability, and we remain confident, despite the court's ruling today, that ultimately, at a trial of this case, Mr. Weinstein will be completely exonerated. Today's ruling was a technical ruling on the law, and although disappointed, it does not in any way suggest that the case against Mr. Weinstein is going to end badly. To the contrary, based on the evidence that I am aware of, I believe that if we proceed to trial, and I think we will fairly soon, I think Mr. Weinstein will be exonerated. I also want to mention one other thing, because we have been bombarded by these inquiries. This is not about the Me Too movement. This is defending a specific criminal case. If the Me Too movement helps level the playing field for women throughout the world, then we are strongly supporting that movement. A movement should not, however, be permitted to push an indictment that is deeply flawed, as we believe this movement has done in this case. So we're defending Harvey Weinstein on specific charges. We are not defending behavior. We are defending allegations of specific criminal conduct, and we believe he will ultimately be exonerated. Thank you.
What he told you at the bench conference?
No, I think the judge's reasoning is in his decision, which you will all have access to. I really don't want to speak for Judge Burke. You read his decision, you will have the same facts as we do. We were discussing scheduling as a practical matter, and that's it.
Is this a big disappointment for you?
It's a disappointment. I don't rate disappointments as being big or small. It's a disappointment because I think the indictment should be dismissed, but I am not the judge. Thank you very much.
So here's what was happening today in New York. Harvey Weinstein and his defense attorneys wanted the judge to dismiss the charges against him. He's been charged with raping a woman inside a hotel room in 2013 and also forcibly performing a sex act on a woman in 2006. His lawyers argued that the case was irreparably tainted, those are their words, by a police detective's alleged interference with a witness and an accuser.
And right now you're hearing from Gloria Allred. She represents some of the women who've accused Harvey Weinstein of sexual assault. We're going to listen in to what she has to say.
Who represents Mr. Weinstein stated about the Me Too movement, I would take issue with that. This indictment was based on evidence and testimony before the grand jury. It was not based on the Me Too movement. So let's be clear about that. The motion filed by Mr. Weinstein's attorneys to dismiss this case was based on, in my opinion, in part, unjustified speculation, not supported by any evidence, or any evidence that was stated, I think was out of context and will be explained at the trial.
Are you satisfied with the NYPD investigation?
I'm satisfied that this case should move forward to trial. Mr. Weinstein should have his day in court, but so should the two women who are alleged to be the victims.
Are you worried that some procedural issues may lead to more dismissals and this case not falling apart because things weren't correctly beforehand?
You know, it appears to me that Mr. Weinstein's public relations machine is with overtime to attempt to potentially impact the jury pool that ultimately will be chosen, to suggest that somehow there's something wrong with this case, when obviously the grand jury, after listening to the testimony, felt that it should go forward. So I'm not concerned about that. I think that headlines suggesting that the case is crumbling are incorrect. In my opinion, it's strong and it's moving forward. It's hard to hear you, but I heard.
Do you think, as in the Cosby case, there might be an opportunity for other women to testify in this case?
Her question was, as in the Cosby case, might there be an opportunity for other alleged victims to testify? As a matter of fact, in the motion made by Mr. Brofman, he refers to what he calls the Cosby motion. I represented 33 accusers in the Bill Cosby criminal case. One was permitted to testify as what they call in Pennsylvania prior bad act witness in the first criminal case, and 3 out of the 5 prior bad act witnesses were permitted to testify in the second criminal trial leading to Mr. Cosby's conviction. I represented 3 out of the 5 prior bad act witnesses who did testify. In New York, it's called a Molyneux motion. It will not surprise me if the prosecution makes that motion at some point to allow other accusers who can show same or similar conduct by Mr. Weinstein to testify. My educated guess is that that's one of the major concerns of the defense, because they put it in today's motion, which of course was denied. The motion to dismiss this indictment was denied. And, I think that it is relevant and probative for other accusers, if they fit the guidelines of the Molyneux motion, to be permitted to testify. As a matter of fact, I think it's essential. I said that all along in the Cosby case. And Mr. Cosby, of course, is where he belongs. In that case, of course, the defense also wanted no other accusers to be permitted to testify. In that case, they also attacked other accusers, and me, and the district attorney, and the court, and so forth. But again, none of us are ever distracted from the fact that there's only one person on trial here. It's not the district attorney, it's not the police, it's Harvey Weinstein. So this case is moving forward, and I hope that as many accusers as possible will testify that fit the guidelines. That's all. I will say that also there, in my opinion, is still time for other accusers to come forward to law enforcement. If they want to speak to me in confidence prior to that, I'm happy to speak with them. I believe that anyone who might have relevant evidence should do their duty and speak to an attorney and assess the benefits and risks, and then speak to law enforcement. I think that's very important. Last point I want to make is the attacks on my client in reference to any communication she may have had with Mr. Weinstein after the alleged assault on her. That in the motion that Mr. Brofman filed, he appears to suggest that somehow, if there are any communications by any alleged victim after any alleged crime was committed, that undermines their testimony that an assault somehow couldn't have taken place. I totally disagree with that. As a matter of fact, my best evidence for that statement that I just made is, again, in the Bill Cosby case, where there were numerous calls and communications by Andrea Constant, the named victim in that criminal case, with Mr. Cosby after the drugging and sexually assaulting of Ms. Constant. That came into evidence, numerous cell phone calls, and nevertheless, the jury convicted. So the theory of the defense that somehow there could not have been any kind of sexual assault, non-consensual sexual activity, if there were communications with any victim after the assault, is belied and completely contradicted by the evidence. And I think once you understand the context of the communications, which I think even if you read them are completely harmless, you will understand why it does not mean that there could not have been any criminal activity. Any other questions? I'll see you on March 7th. Thank you.
So again, that was Gloria Allred, who represents some of the women who've accused Harvey Weinstein of sexual assault. In a brief 10-minute hearing, Judge James Burke denied the defense's motion to dismiss any counts, but conferred with counsel at the bench and basically decided that this will move on. There's going to be a pre-trial hearing on March 7th, which is what Gloria Allred made reference to. There's some images of Harvey Weinstein leaving. Benjamin Brafman, who's his attorney, actually was at the podium before Gloria Allred and basically said, you know, he's disappointed by this decision, but he's ready for trial and believes that they will be completely exonerated. Again, Harvey Weinstein maintains that he did not have any non-consensual sexual relations with any of the women who've accused him of sexual assault.